Oh, sorry. Well, let me get you. Sorry. There you go. Should be able to see him now.
Yeah, perfect. All right, I'm gonna mute myself. Best of luck, Jennifer.
Okay, it's 11. I'm going to get the recording started, and I'll be starting right now. Good morning. This is Steve Cantor with DBA Fundamentals, and this is our first session of November. Today we have Jennifer McCown with T-SQL's hidden support feature. We'll get started on that in just a few minutes. First of all, I want to go through a couple of things. Our sponsor is SentryOne, and they help provide the money that goes to these presentations and also money for prizes and gifts. So go check them out. They've got a lot of freebies that they give away. They also sell some great monitoring software, tons of different things. They've got the SentryOne Plan Explorer. You can get that for free. That used to be just a moderate version, and they sold the professional version. Now they're giving away the professional version. It is fantastic for looking at query plans. They do training advice. They have tons of great videos. They have lots of PDFs you can download of just really major authors, really good books, and great articles. So anyway, go check them out. You can hit the camera at the top right-hand side of your screen, and that'll do a screenshot of this or any other screen that you want to save, so you can go back and review it. We don't have any special things going on right now. We're going to start off with the first of the year with some really good prizes. We might give away a Christmas prize. I don't know this time. We didn't really set one up for the last quarter, so we might just make it a lot bigger for the first quarter. PASS has multiple virtual groups. They cover most of the, if not all of the major languages, all of the major topics. So go out there, you can find something for everything that you probably do somewhere, and they give special sessions at least once a month, sometimes twice a month, sometimes three a month, like we do. The sessions will be recorded, and we'll have the recording up usually within a day or two if we don't run into any problems, and you get to it off of our YouTube channel or at our website. You can go to dbafund.org or dbafundtube.org. Okay. Today we have Jennifer McCown. She's from Dallas. Her and her husband are from Dallas, and she's a Microsoft Certified Master. Today she's going to be doing a talk with some really good details on commenting. This is something that we all need work on, and she's going to show us how to make it easier, more understandable, with lots of great tips. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Jen. Here we go, Jen. Let me make you the presenter.
There we go. Show my screen. Let's see how that goes. I'm gonna assume everything went well and there's no technical glitches.
Looks good.
Okay, good. So, hi guys. As he said, I'm Jen, and this is I like to call it T-SQL's hidden support feature, because that'll bring more of y'all in than saying, you know, -- comments. Yeah. But seriously, I think you're going to get a lot out of this, because all right, we'll talk about the origins of this session in just a minute. First, I guess we'll talk just a little bit more about me. I am, as he said, Microsoft Certified Master. I am one of the 2 Midnight DBAs. Sean and I have made free training videos for IT topics, a lot of SQL, but also PowerShell and some other things. And that's all up and free at midnightdba.com. Our consulting arm is Midnight SQL, and you may have heard we've got a software company, Minionware, where we make free backup and maintenance software, and a really outstanding flagship product that I can't even start on because we won't have enough time for that in the comment session. So this session came up. We were giving a talk up in Oklahoma, and I was going on some sort of diatribe about how people need to comment their code, and I stopped myself. I said, you know what, I really need to not go down this road, because I do this, I get on my soapbox, I swear I could make a full session out of this. And the organizer up there, Matt, said, oh, really? I said, yeah, someone needs to double dog dare me. He says, I double dog dare you. I said, well, I'll do it. He says, well, I'll put you in the Oklahoma SQL Saturday. So I did, and he did, and you know, that's where we came up with this guy. I need to minimize this so that I can see. All right, so today we'll be discussing secrets of the universe as relates to commenting, and eventually the slide will also go forward. There we go. We're going to make a case for comments, talk about how to. You wouldn't think I could fill up an entire session on this, but again, I think you're really going to like this. Help systems and alternative commenting. Okay, so in the abstract, I say that comments are, I actually say here, I'll quote from it, the most effective T-SQL support feature comes installed with every edition, is enabled by default, and costs no overhead, and that it's comments. Why is it a hidden support feature? Comments themselves are not hidden. It's the idea of comments as a support feature that's kind of stuck back behind the curtain somewhere. A comment is a form of documentation, and if you ask me, it's one of the best forms if you do it right. Documentation makes code more supportable by making it more understandable. Maybe you're the one that's benefiting from that, in which case, you know, yay, we always like to make things easier on ourselves. Maybe it's the rest of the team, or maybe it's whoever comes after you and supports the code, which is also really good. And what's the word? I can't think of the word. Not altruist. Someone will tell me the word later, I'm sure. So why is it a hidden support feature? It's that comments let you understand the code quickly. It's targeted documentation. Now, traditional documentation, not many people are fond of making documentation as is defined. You know, put things in SharePoint, put things in a wiki, put things in a Word doc. If we were all in the same room together, I would ask the question to the room. I would say, all right, why is it that no one likes making documentation? And you would all enthusiastically raise your hand, and I would call upon you one at a time. So these are the things that people tend to say. First off, making documentation is a pain. I don't want to. And I got to kind of get your back, because we're technologists. We got into this to play with code and fix problems and make things happen, and you know, it's exciting stuff. Nobody goes to lunch bragging that they wrote 4 pages of documentation. No, we all go to lunch saying, yeah, I finished that SP earlier. It's good, it's rocking. So yeah, traditional documentation is kind of a pain. You would also say, if we were in the same room together, well, it gets out of date very quickly. You're absolutely right, you know, fictional commenter. It does get out of date quickly because you write a thing down and then the program changes or the process changes, and nobody goes back, or very few people go back and are very diligent about updating that documentation. Now, I will pause and say there are some individuals and some companies that are extremely diligent about that, but we can agree that it's an exception, right? Someone else would wave their hand frantically in the air, and when called upon would say, nobody reads the documentation. Yes, absolutely, that's true. It's stuck over, again, in SharePoint or in a wiki, and there are a few exceptions, that people that go looking for information that they need, but by and large it gets written and then just left alone. Ask me how I know. We don't need it. My code is self-documenting. Yes, we do, and no, it's not, just for the record. We do need documentation. Oh, we'll just do that when the project is done. This isn't exactly why we don't do it, but it's how it winds up not getting done. Because what do we do when a project is over? Do we have a nice long period of reflection, discussion, a big post-mortem, and, you know, let's clean all this up and make sure? No, not typically. Again, technologists are in it to solve problems. Companies are in IT to make problems go away. They don't typically see documentation as a necessary part of that. But I'll document myself out of a job. Again, no, you won't. I have actually, yes, heard this several times. I see, and I imagine a few of you looking doubtfully at me. It's pretty common to think, well, if I write all this down, they'll have all the information they need to go forward. No, they won't. The other point is, if a company is looking to get rid of you, whether or not you have done documentation is an almost zero factor in their calculations. So yeah, I would not worry about that considerably. There are too many benefits to doing documentation to worry about a really outside chance. So comments, I find, are better than traditional documents because, first off, once we get in the habit, people will actually write comments. I'm already in the code. It's not far out of my way. It's got a lot of benefits. Yeah, I'll go ahead and put a little note in here, no problem. Comments are extremely hard to lose and very easy to read. When you go looking for documentation that's traditional, you got to figure out where it is. Okay, where's the company wiki again? Nobody's actually touched that in 5 years, so I don't actually know. Is the SharePoint server still up? Has anyone put anything in there? Yeah, you have to go searching for it. A comment in a stored procedure, for example, you open up the stored procedure. It's right there. It gets backed up with it. It gets restored with it. It gets copied, all that jazz. It's very natural to keep comments up to date. As you go in and change a piece of code, then you see the comment no longer applies, or something has changed. You go ahead and make that change right there. So that's good. A comment. I began using the word exobrain and the thought that, oh wait, somebody probably defined that. And sure enough, your exobrain is information that you store outside of your head, right? People who like to make lists, people who like to keep notes on things, know exactly what I'm talking about. People who use bullet journals, a little shout out to bullet journalists. And I'll tell you why this is necessary, because again, I see some shadowy figure back shaking their head doubtfully. We're IT guys. We run into such massive quantities of information. One simple example of this, I've been going to different SQL events for years and years now, and I really gave myself a hard time that I couldn't remember people's names. Oh, I'm really bad at remembering people's names. Oh gosh, I've seen this guy like 5 times before. Why can't I remember his name? It's very embarrassing. And then I started to think about it. I see these days upwards of hundreds or thousands of people in a year. And I see most of them maybe once or twice in that given year. It's not remotely surprising that I don't have a catalog of every single person's name, or even the majority of these people's names. So same thing with technology. You write a piece of code, and then you look at another piece of code, and then you go into a database, and then you go and install a server, and then you're already 7 steps past the code you wrote yesterday. You're not going to remember specifically why you did it this way next week, or why the requirement was that you use a CTE in 6 weeks, or so forth. So yeah, use your comments as your exobrain. Here's a little example of that, where we've got a section of code from, I believe this is from, yeah, it's from our backup product. I have no qualms about talking about this because it's a free tool. Go get it, download it, have fun. You can look at the code yourself. But we comment these things very thoroughly. So we've got a couple of markers here, and then I see, okay, if tuning settings level equal, then do a thing. Offhand, I may not remember what on earth this is about. But with the comment, to give a little context, oh, I see, you find out whether you're going to be working at the all or the override level. Oh, that's right. In here, you have a default level settings, and then you can override for a specific database. I remember now. Just little notes like that are very, very useful. I got to tell you the truth. I have another reason for making this, and that the fact that comments are such a big platform for me, such a big soapbox for me, is I've been without them for so long and been in charge of going in and figuring out why this is slow and how this should be working, and does this make sense logically? I have no earthly idea. So going back and looking at our own code and seeing these little notes in there is very soothing. Okay, that's better. All right, let me check my outline real quick and make sure I'm not forgetting anything really important. Yeah, the other thing about writing comments, the very act of explaining something will bring clarity to you. So if you have to sit down and write out a comment saying, this piece of code is for that, it has very often worked out that it reveals some flaw or something that I've overlooked. Oh, wait a minute, I have to loop this in as well. Oh, I forgot, I need to join to this table as well, or else this isn't going to make any sense at all. So that's just another side benefit. So you can get to know your code an awful lot faster. Remember, we're still kind of building the case for comments, right? We're defending the idea of it. Let's go over to some actual code. There we go. Here is a stored procedure, again, that's out of our backup solution. And it's minion.backupdb. It's well named, so that's a good start. BackupDB, it's probably for backing up a database. And we can get to know it a little bit by the parameters. Okay, passes in a database name. Okay, cool, so yes, looks like it's for a database. Backup type, all right, I imagine that's like, full diff log statement only. Oh, cool, I get it. We can generate the backup statements, cool, and not run them. Daytime. Why would I pass it? Okay, I don't know. And debug makes sense. So we hire stored procedure. This is just kind of a little example, right? All right, so we've got our initial set of, wow, that's a lot of variables. I'm not going to go over each and every one of those because let's get into the actual code, right? If execution date time is null, then set it. Well, I suppose that makes sense, but I don't know why we're passing it in. Set maintenance to be equal to current, set server instance, okay. If statement only equals 0, then we can go on like this, looking at each individual line and trying to figure out what it does. Here, let's zoom back out. For a long, hang on, let's grab this and scroll. Long time. I don't want to dig into this procedure and 4,000 lines of code later. You see the lines over here, right? You see the line numbers over here. Finally, have a good comprehensive view of what this stored procedure does. That is not what I want. Let's go take a look at a better version. Oh, there we go. If we've got a flower box right up at the top. So here's BackupDB with comments, which is how you'll find it when you go and download it. Oh, that's much better. So we've got our introductory stuff, where I can get more information. That's very nice. Oh, the purpose of the procedure. Awesome. What features it has. It looks like it has no limitations. Interesting. I'll walk through. That's brilliant. This is just a little summary up at the top. What the parameters are for, what the tables are for. Here, and we can even stop and say, okay, so why do we pass in execution date time? Oh, I see. This procedure is called by another procedure, and that's used for the operation and for logging. Okay, that's great. We're able to get to know this thing so much faster, and even going through and looking at individual queries, we can see little tribal knowledge, little sections. Oh, I see, this is where we're going to start logging, and so forth and so on. A whole lot faster. I've got another, oh, I see, this is just to show that, I've been showing the comments for stored procedures, but of course you can totally comment views all the livelong day in the same way, with the flower box and with comments within and so forth, and functions and triggers and a couple of other things. I know you're already thinking, wait a minute, you've got some things that you can't comment. Well, we'll talk about that. We will. Right now we're building the case, and I think we've done reasonably well saying that it's a good idea to get to know your code faster with use of comments. So all right, there's the why. Now let's talk about how we want to comment. Most of us are familiar with the idea of a flower box, that little green section up at the top with tons of information. If you are coding within a company and your code is not for public consumption, your flower box is going to look a little different, but it still can be worthwhile to note the source. This was written by so-and-so on such a date. So they know who to contact for questions if you're still at the company, and so forth. The purpose, man, I'm going to say this a few times, but purpose is one of my absolute favorite things to include in comments. Just give me a general overview of what this thing is for, maybe even what it's called from, right? That's a big piece of tribal knowledge that cannot be expressed in the code itself, what this is for and where it gets called from. A lot of people like a modification log too. I don't have big objections. I've never been a huge one for the modification log, but I'm getting slowly convinced, so I'm all for it. So that's sort of a traditional flower box, but we can do more, like we said. If you are putting out something for public consumption, put your URL in there, put your Twitter handle in there. You know, brag a little bit about how great you are, and you know, you never know how widespread this thing is going to get and how admired, and it can get you jobs. You know, oh, you wrote that thing, you know. Again, if we were in the same room, I would ask you to raise your hand if you'd heard of SP Who is Active. And at least half of you would, and then we would have a good laugh over, you know, how widespread the name Adam Mechanic is because of SP Who is Active. Same kind of thing. So about your organization yourself, define your parameters. We actually like to define our temp tables and what they're used for. Again, one of my absolute favorite things, the thing that I always include, is an example execution statement for stored procedures. That is excellent while you're developing for testing. It's excellent, you know, for others to see, you know, a couple of examples of how it's used, but it's also kind of an implicit recommendation. Oh, well, you know, here's one of the ways this should be used, is to call it, in the backup DB example, to call it with a single database name and statement only equal 1, so that you can generate the statements for that. And then the table of contents or walkthrough, again, it is really, really useful just to get an overview of what steps happen and where they happen in relation to each other. So that's our flower box. Another type of comment is the single line comment. And that's the really nice tribal knowledge. Oh, by the way, we did this, we had to limit by date because of this weird archival strategy they're doing, and so forth and so on. That kind of tribal knowledge is absolutely great to stick in right next to the query to which it pertains. Comment pretty much anywhere you want. There does come a point where there's too much commenting in a procedure or review or something, but man, you'd have to work really, really hard to get there. And we will talk about what to do when you do get to that point, where you've basically got more comments than code, I think is definitely where A line is. I showed you this in the actual code. We like to do section headers and footers. You see there's a begin server label and end server label block there. And man, those are nice and visual. They're kind of like chapter headers in a book, right? It's very clear where this thing is. The name of it tells you kind of what it's for, and it's absolutely fantastic for identifying a logical block of code. So you can say, oh, you know what? This event has to happen after the logging, so we want to make sure to put it after the end of that block. We've also found again and again that it's fantastic for when you're editing your code and you say, oh, you know what? I just realized this piece of code really has to go first before the logging. You can just grab that entire begin and end block without having to figure out, oh, well, gee, is this part of this logically speaking, or is it not? So that can be extremely useful. We also like those little begin and end markers, because if you're a formatting nut like I am, or if you've got SQL prompt or something to do that automatic formatting for you, then yeah, you get that nice automatic indenting that'll give you a visual indicator of, oh, I see, you know, here's where the tuning type level if then begins and ends. But it's also nice to label those specifically so that there's no confusion. We do this in PowerShell too, at the beginning and end of you know, the curly brackets, right? So all right, what have we got next? Yeah, I will make a note, since we've mentioned formatting. that it's kind of an implicit commentary. You can see where the first two selects begin and end, and then you've got an if, and everything under the first if is indented, and everything under the second if is indented. Again, those visual indicators are kind of an implicit commentary. So I would encourage you to format your code well, or to use or get an automatic formatter. I just realized I've been talking nonstop for 25 minutes, and I said before the session started, I was like, oh yeah, I'll take breaks for questions and comments. So do we have any questions and comments so far?
Yeah, we've got a question and a comment.
Lovely.
So somebody wants to know if you have any kind of resources or templates for comments that you use for store procedures or views or functions.
I do, actually. What a marvelous question. If I don't have it published, I certainly can publish it out on my blog, or hand it over to you guys to post wherever you like. I do have a Flowerbox template. Let me see if I've got it here. Oh, yeah, see? I did not lie. Header template. When I'm coding, I tend to copy-paste from another stored procedure or view so that I have all of that. But I do have a simple header here where, here's my company and contact information, purpose example, and so forth. So certainly you can screenshot that guy, or download it later on and make it into your own template.
Ah, perfect. Yeah. We have a comment from a person saying that they have a small nitpick that they found with the modification log is kind of redundant when your store procedures are a version control system. And it's an example of needless maintenance.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I actually meant to mention that, and then just let it slip by, that any kind of sort control is going to take place of your modification log, which may be one of the reasons why I'm a little bit lukewarm on it, and maybe not. So, yes, sure.
I will say, actually, my old job as a support engineer. Perfect.
Okay, okay. So let's see what comes next. All right, we talked about formatting. Wait, I think I may have double-clicked. There we go. Yep. Okay, so help systems. I mentioned before that there can come a point where if you're very verbose or something is very complicated or any of a number of other reasons, you've got simply too much to say, then would be reasonably, I'll say, supported by your program or procedure or view or what have you. That's the time to start thinking about a help system. And I'm not going to be at all apologetic when I say that this is where we really get to start nerding out over our comments, because now making a help system combines all the best of putting information into your exobrain and coding a solution at the same time. So some of you guys are going to be just as excited about this as I am. So I call a help system advanced commenting. Let's take a look at, come on, next slide. There we go. So help as a formalized comment solution. We've got a few options available to us. We've got, just for store procedures, just adding an @help parameter that simply returns a bunch of text, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. We've got a separate stored procedure, or we can use both. So let's take a look at a couple of these guys. On the plus side, making a help system, the information is much more extensive. It can be much more user-friendly in terms of, oh gosh, you can make it searchable. You can, well, we'll see some of the options available. But on the other hand, there's a lot more information to write. It requires more support if it's user-facing. Formatting can be troublesome, and one of the things I don't have on here is that we've sort of removed, with a help system, some of the benefits of comments, in that now it is a slightly separate entity, although we're going to keep it in the database here. And it's not immediately to hand when you open up your stored procedure. you can weigh the benefits for yourself and go around that as needed. You know, maybe your comments in your stored procedures and views might say, here's a piece of information. For more, access the help system in this database using this command. So that's a nice reminder to your other people that kind of look at the code that there's more information to be had, and to yourself to update it as needed. Nope, we're not there yet. We need to go and look at the code. Now wait for these to load. So first option is simply an @help parameter, which is the absolute simplest way to go after inline comments. And there's more than one way to implement it. I forgot that we do call it a puke of text when you just bring back several mini paragraphs and charts of information. But yeah, so you can just have a bunch of information come out in paragraph form. You can semi-format it, you can super format it, or you can reference an external table. So a while back, Sean was teaching a couple of up-and-coming DBAs, not just commenting, but SQL stuff in general. And Jordan English agreed to let us use her store procedure as an example. So let me make sure, let's get in the demo database. There we go. And let me create this. There we go. So she's got the simple @help, and when we run this, it gives us a good morning. It's just barely morning where I am, which I thought was very neat. It's a nice little, it's a nicety to figure out what time it is wherever you're running this, and then do good morning, good afternoon, good evening. And then we get back this just pre-formatted text in essence, and she gives us the purpose and the form, the parameters, and so forth. So that's quite nice. And if we go down here and do a search for that @help later in the document, there we go. If help equals 1, then here's the bit where she figures out the time, and then, like I said, this is extremely simple, easy to maintain. It's right in the stored procedure. I rather like it. There's nothing wrong with this at all. Our next option is to develop the simplest possible separate help system. All we would really need for that is a table to hold your information. I like to have a stored procedure to be able to insert answers to that table, and then something to bring back answers. So I've probably already got this created. Yeah, sure enough. So here we've got a table, an insert procedure, and then a little bit later on. Oh, by the way, point out, even within my help procedure, I provide a flower box with that same information I was talking about. Oh, look at that. Created this over a year ago. So if we wanted to insert more information, we would just run the insert procedure. To pull something back, I can execute it with, say, the name of a topic and get information back. I can see this is kind of a fuzzy lookup that I've included to say, okay, anything with help in the title, bring in. And I've chosen to make sure that we can just run the procedure itself to bring everything back so people can focus on what they want. Nice, simple, a little bit of, extra added sparkles, I guess you would say, but really nothing much to it. So before we get on to the third one, and I've got a bonus one as well, any questions or comments here?
One just came in there about what about table and column commenting? It's not so easy to, as you're coding, how do you do it? Do you use a third-party tool, and is there any that you recommend? Especially free ones.
Absolutely. That's actually the fourth section we're going to get onto just after this. Alternative commenting when this just won't do. So good question, but we're not quite there yet. So we can get more complex if we want to, and I have done in the Minion free tools. I've I've got a couple of tables and a stored procedure, and there's a good deal you can do with it. So we'll just go ahead. You know,
Jen.
you may get on these topics, and then you can pick a topic, say quick start, and get that information specifically with very nice formatting and so forth. This took a lot more work, and I'm not going to dig into something. It took more really as you like. I was going to say we're not going to dig into the code for this because A, you can download it and look at it yourself if you really want to.
Jen.
I've got an echo. Yeah.
You're somehow I don't know what's happening with your sound, but it's doubling up. You do have an echo. It's like it's buffering, and it sits there for a second, and then it all comes in.
It's not good. Let's see.
It's happened a little bit during the session, but it got pretty bad there for about 30, 45 seconds.
Is it still doing it?
You sound all right now, and your screen's moving. I don't know, were you moving your screen real fast? I couldn't. It was just frozen. But sometimes that happens when somebody tries to run through things real fast.
No, I don't think so. But I'll keep in mind that to be slower. So just to recap that, you can get as nerdy as you want with your help systems, or make it as simple as you want. It's completely up to you. And we are rolling along just fine. Oh, that's right. I promised a bonus. So when I was building this session, I went looking around and thinking about help systems, and I thought, wait a minute. I use Who is Active, and Who is Active has an @help, and it's got a nice little return there where you just do Who is Active @help = 1, and you get a couple of different result sets back. I was like, oh, that's quite nice. I wonder how Adam did this, if he's got a temporary table in there that he loads, or what. So I went looking. Let's go take a look. Let's go find @help. Okay, so by default, it's off of his. Oh, here we go. If help = 1. Now, as we scroll down here, I don't see any large blocks of text. What I actually see, let's go back up slowly. There we go. What I actually see is a bunch of string manipulation. Okay. This is the first time I had paid any attention at all. So all that string manipulation from DM exec requests and SQL text for the current spit. Wait a second. What's happening here is Adam is grabbing the text of the query currently running, which is Who is Active by definition, and he's queuing off of these little markers to grab this text and return it as if it were within a table. Now, that is just about as fiddly and nerdy and elegant a solution as I have ever seen. And so I wanted to make a point to point that out and say, wow, I would not have wanted to work that out for myself, but what a great way not to have to repeat yourself, to have this information and have the comments and then stick it into a table or something else. So yeah, that's really something. That's some next level stuff right there. But someone had asked about what about when we're not dealing with procedures and so forth. Yeah, there are trade-offs, folks. Comments are better than traditional documentation in the ways that we have described. They are not as effective for things that are difficult to comment, like tables. So let's look at that. One of the first things people say or think of or raise their hand about when we're talking about this is extended properties. I will say that I am not a huge fan. Let's look a little bit at why. Actually, let me close these guys down so they're not in the way. There we go. Okay, so if you're not familiar with them, extended properties are a feature of SQL Server which allow you to attach information to a database, to an object, to a column, to lots of different levels. And in theory, they're really, really cool. It's really great information. So let's say we wanted to add a property to a database. You would use sp_add extended property and give it a name and a value. So okay, let's do that. Oh, it already exists, so it's already there from a previous execution. But we can update that property and say, okay, sp_update extended property, use the same name and a different value. Cool. Now, let's go ahead and list out all of the extended properties for the database. So select name value, where name equal help me. So we want to grab that for that particular, okay, there we go. I'm a little bit irritated because this isn't so bad and this isn't so bad, but I much prefer just running a stored procedure with add help equal 1 or running say minion.help than select these things from fn list extended property default. It's required. You can't run it without these guys. They have to be there. That bothers me. Another thing that bothers me about extended properties, and by the way, this really is all personal preference. Some of you may be absolutely in love with extended properties and use them to their fullest, and I salute you. I think that's fantastic. If they work for you, more power. For me, don't care for it. So this is a simple example of adding a property. And by the way, before we go too far, I will say, if you go to your Template Explorer, then, come on, Template Explorer, there you go. Then you can totally do extended properties template. So add an extended property. So that does simplify things a little bit. Okay, no problem. Having said that, let's look at the code it would take to add a description to a table. And not kidding, this is what you have to do. Exec sys sp add extended property name value. Level O type and name. Level 1 type and name. You have to actually say schema is minion, table is help objects. And for a specific column, same exact thing. Schema, minion, table, help objects. Column ID. This makes me crazy. So the people that like extended properties like it because kind of some of the same reasons we like comments. It's built into the database. It gets backed up with it. There are actually tools that will help document your system using those extended properties. It'll pull it out automatically and make it into a nice file and all that sort of thing. So there are benefits. I'm just saying they make me crazy. I prefer to use one of those external help systems. So something like, oh, I don't know, minion.help backup. What's one of the table names? Backup settings. Let's do a fuzzy lookup real quick. There we go. This is what I wanted. So something like this, where I've got all that information in a table, and I can pull it out and nicely format it and have all of my column information and definitions and so forth. Again, there are trade-offs, right? Do I want to update extended properties? Do I want to keep this table up to date? It's up to you. At this point, we're talking about personal preference. SIS packages. They are actually fairly easy to annotate, to comment on, using annotations. Actually, if you right-click anywhere in a package, and you'll have an option to add annotation, and that's absolutely brilliant. John has an entire session on this at midnightdba.com called Commenting Tribal Knowledge in SIS Packages. But a couple of highlights. Go ahead and create a flower box in your package. Give it the title, the author info, the purpose, what it's called by, the steps. Notice that's very similar to our walkthrough from before. And that already gives you a ton of information just upon opening the package. Name each step something meaningful and well. Sequence container doesn't tell me anything, but like find each customer tells me a good deal more, so that's nice. And just like in our stored procedures, we like to mark the start and the end of our workflow. See the little start and end markers on the left. You can comment, I'm going to air quote line comments by doing annotations within or next to your package steps. So yeah, you can do quite a lot with SIS and annotations. SSRS. The only way I have two ways to comment directly on SSRS reports, and they're both very hacky. I think for something like this, you would probably end up doing some sort of external help system. And by the way, that could be as simple as creating a separate SSRS report that is a help report that just keeps information about all of your reports. So either that or traditional documentation, unfortunately, because the only real way to comment within SRS is to comment within the XML code itself, which is so ridiculously hidden that and persnickety that it's really not worth doing. But if you were going to place a comment within your XML code, you need to use the VB style comment markers, the less than, bang, dash, dash. It has to be after the end of the report, after that whack report, and you cannot use dash, dash anywhere within it, or it'll absolutely flip out. So yeah, see what I mean? It's really, really hacky. I had someone else point out that you can also put basically invisible code, again, here my air quotes, or invisible text, on your SS report itself. But I don't like that because A, it's hidden, and B, it could potentially mess up the formatting of your report, which, that becomes important if somebody wants to print. Oh yeah, and you can actually comment on expressions within SRS, so that's something. Just use the VB marker, the tick. So, but yeah, not a lot more. We do the best we can with what we have. But for some things, it may end up being more useful to you to do a little bit of traditional documentation or something like it. So, before we jump on the summary, comments, questions, thoughts. The audience is spellbound.
Jennifer.
Yes.
There was one question. They were talking about SSIS. I found my annotations going from SSIS 2005 to 2012 were lost with upgrade conversion.
Really? Oh no. That is a good thing to know. And also keep copies of your 2005 packages and move over some of that annotation, I suppose. Boy, what a pain.
I bet you Microsoft just forgot it or something.
Yeah, one of those nice little irritations that isn't worth fixing, apparently.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just an FYI, I guess. She wanted to be sure other people didn't have to deal with it. Anyway, this has been a great talk. Let's see. If we have anything, definitely everybody should go to Midnight DBA and check out their website. I was just kind of perusing it a little bit, and I'd never really been around it that much, but it looks like it's chock full of great stuff. So you need to try it out. Let's see, there were a few things you were going to let us have and maybe post up, or you can just send us links and we'll let people know to go to your website and pull down the templates and stuff like that.
Sure. Well, while we're talking, if I've actually got some of those up already or not.
Yeah, if you've got it, just go to your
my
site.
blog, by the way. I'm not sure. I want to find out. So I've got, oh, not events, consulting, more DBA, tutorials. All right, I'll find it. I'll find it and put it up, and maybe put it up in a blog post and right there.
Okay.
So yeah.
We'd love to have you back sometime too.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've got a session recording up. I understand DBA Fundamentals has recorded this and is going to put up this exact recording, so that's excellent. And yeah, that's all I've got. Thanks for coming, everybody. I really appreciate it.
Okay, well, we really appreciate it. We have a session next week with Bob Ward talking about 2017. He's going to go do a deep dive on that, so everybody needs to show up for that.
Yeah, I double down on that. You need to show up for Bob Ward. He's an excellent speaker.
And he definitely knows his stuff. He knows the ins and outs of it. So anyway, thank you. We really appreciated it.
Well, you're welcome. We'll see you next time.
Thank you. Bye.
All right, bye.